Welcome to Pumping Python. My name is Jacob Itegboje, and this is list comprehensions, which is a simple way to make a list from an iterable, usually on one line. Time to write some code. I'll open the Explorer, then with Control and tilde on the keyboard, open a terminal. On Windows without subsystem Linux, /make python tdd.ps1 list_comprehensions. On the other operating systems, /make python tdd.sh. list_comprehensions as the name of the project. Enter to run it. It makes the folders and files that are needed, installs packages, then runs the first test. When I Control or Option click on the file name, it opens in the editor. I will change true to false to make the test pass. Then change the name of the class to match the capwords format. Capital L, remove the underscore capital C. Come down to the first test, change it to test_making_a_list_w_a_4_loop. Change the assertion to a_list =, square brackets. This makes an empty list and names it. Iterable =, range parentheses 0, 4. This makes a range object that goes from 0 to the second number given -1. So in this case, that would be 0 to 3. Enter twice for item in iterable : this goes over the range object one item at a time. a_list.append parentheses item. This adds each item from the range object to the list as it goes through the loop. I will add an assertion to show what the list looks like after the operation. Self.assert equal parentheses a_list, square brackets. The terminal shows assertion error. Add 0, 1, 2, 3 in the square brackets. The test passes. I can also do the same thing with the list constructor. Self.assert equal parentheses a_list, list parentheses. The terminal shows assertion error. Add iterable in the parentheses. The test passes. Why would I use a for loop when I can use the list constructor and that uses less characters? In some cases, one is better than the other. I'll show that before the chapter is over. But first, I'm going to practice, or for now, I'm going to practice writing a for loop. Self.assert equal parentheses. Source.list_comprehensions.a_4_loop parentheses iterable, comma at the end. Square bracket 0, 1, 2, 3. The terminal shows name error. Name source is not defined. Hashtag name error in the list of exceptions encountered. Then go to the top of the file, enter before the import statement, add import source.list_comprehensions. The terminal shows attribute error. Module source to list comprehensions has no attribute to a for loop. I'll grab list comprehensions.py from the source folder, put it on the left side of the editor, close the Explorer. Then add defa underscore for underscore loop, parentheses, colon at the end, return none. The terminal shows type error. A for loop takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. Add a underscore container in the parentheses. The terminal shows assertion error. None is not equal to square bracket 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'll change the return statement. Square bracket 0, 1, 2, 3. The test passes. The problem with this solution is it's fixed. This means that if the range object changes, the test is going to fail. I'm going to add randomness to the test to make sure that I write a better solution. If I change the range object, say, to 5, the terminal shows assertion error. Undo the change. At the top of the file, enter import random. Then come down to the range object, change forward to random.randint, parentheses 2, 1000. The terminal shows assertion error. This now gives me a range object that goes from 0 to anywhere between 1 and 999. And the range object changes every time the test runs. Come here to the first assertion, change this list to list parentheses iterable. The terminal shows green. This is a duplicate, so I'll remove that line. Come down to the list in the second assertion, change that to a underscore list. The terminal shows assertion error. In the a for loop function, enter after the colon, add result equal sign square brackets. Then for stuff in a underscore container colon, result.append parentheses stuff. Return result. The test passes. I'll remove the other return statement. I can also make a list from an iterable with the extend method, which was covered in the chapter on lists. I'll add a test for it. df test underscore making underscore a underscore list underscore w underscore extend parentheses self colon at the end. A underscore list equal sign square brackets. Iterable equal sign range parentheses 0 comma random dot randint parentheses 2 comma 1000. Self.assert is none, parentheses, underscore list.extend, parentheses. The terminal shows type error. List.extend takes exactly one argument, 0 given. In the parentheses, add iterable. The terminal shows green. Self.assert equal, parentheses, a underscore list, comma, list, parentheses. The terminal shows assertion error. Add iterable. The test passes. The extend method is better than the for loop because it uses less characters. My assumption here is that it uses some kind of loop in its implementation, but still not better than the list constructor. I made the same variable in both tests, so I'll add the setup method to remove that duplication. Enter twice after the colon after the class name. def setup with a capital U, parentheses, self, colon at the end. Self.a underscore list equals sign square brackets. Self.iterable equals sign range, parentheses 0, comma random dot rand int, parentheses 2, comma 1000. Then come down to test making a list with a for loop, and F2 on a underscore list, change it to self.a underscore list. Enter to accept the change. The test is still green, so I'll remove that line. F2 on iterable, change it to self.iterable. Enter to accept the change, still green, remove the line and the extra spaces. Come down to test making a list with extend, F2 on a underscore list, self dot. Enter, still green, remove the line. Do the same thing with iterable, change it to self.iterable. Still green, I'll remove the line. I can also make a list from an iterable with a list comprehension. That's what this chapter is about. I'll add a test to show it. DEF test underscore making underscore a underscore list underscore w underscore a underscore list underscore comprehension, parentheses self, colon at the end. Self.assert equal, parentheses. List parentheses self.iterable, comma, square brackets. A list comprehension has the same syntax as a for loop, but just without the append. So I can write for item in self.iterable, but before all that, item. So it's for item in self.iterable. The test passes. I'll add another assertion to practice it. Self.assert equal, parentheses. Source.list underscore comprehensions dot a underscore list underscore comprehension, parentheses self.iterable, comma at the end. Square brackets item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows attribute error. Module source.list comprehensions has no attribute a list comprehension. Enter 3 times after return result. def a underscore list underscore comprehension, parentheses a underscore collection, colon at the end. Return square brackets element for element in a underscore collection. The test passes. With the for loop, I made a list, then looped over the iterable and appended each item from the iterable to the list. With a list comprehension, all of that happens on one line. But it's still not yet better than the list constructor. What if I had to make a list based on conditions? How would I do that? I'll add a test for it. def test underscore making underscore a underscore list underscore w underscore conditions, parentheses self, colon at the end. Even underscore numbers equal sign square brackets. For item in self.iterable colon, if item percent sign 2 equal signs 0 colon, even underscore numbers dot append parentheses item. The percent sign here is the modulo operator, which was in how to measure sleep duration in test module operation. It returns the remainder of dividing the number on the left by the number on the right. This if statement checks if that remainder is 0. If it is, then the number gets added to the even numbers list. I'll add an assertion. Self.assert equal parentheses. Even underscore numbers, comma, list parentheses self.iterable. The terminal shows assertion error. The list made with the for loop has 0, 2, 4, 6, and so on, just even numbers. The one made with the constructor has every number in the range object. How can I make the even numbers list using the list constructor without changing the iterable? Well, since I made the even numbers list with a for loop, I can do it with a list comprehension. Change this to square brackets item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows assertion error. This is just every number in the range object. But add if item modulo 2 is equal to 0, the test passes. I'll add another assertion. Self.assert equal parentheses. Source.list underscore comprehensions dot get underscore even underscore numbers parentheses self.iterable comma at the end. Square brackets item for item in self.iterable if item modulo 2 is equal to 0. The terminal shows attribute error. add def, get underscore even underscore numbers, parentheses, numbers, colon at the end. Return square brackets number for number in numbers. The terminal shows assertion error. Add if number modulo 2 is equal to 0. The test passes. This is a case where the list comprehension is better than the list constructor. Also, the for loop is better than the list constructor when I'm dealing with conditions. Now, I wrote the same condition 3 times in that test, which means if I have to change it, I have to change it everywhere that I wrote it. I'll show this. So if I want to do item modulo 3 instead of 2, the terminal shows assertion error. Change the list comprehension in the first assertion. The test passes. Change the 2 to 3 in the list comprehension in the second assertion. The terminal shows assertion error. Change 2 to 3 in the solution. The test passes. I will add a function to remove the duplication. Enter 3 times after import unit test. def condition parentheses number colon at the end. Return number modulo 3 is equal to 0. Then come down to test making a list with conditions. Comment out the if statement, add if condition parentheses item colon at the end. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the commented line. Come down to the list comprehension in the first assertion, comment the line out, add square brackets item for item in self.iterable if condition parentheses item. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the commented line. Do the same thing in the list with the list comprehension in the second assertion. Comment it out. Square brackets item for item in self.iterable if condition parentheses item. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the commented line. Yes, adding the function adds 2 extra lines of code, or if you count the spaces, but it also makes managing the code easier. So if I wanted to change this to number modulo 2 to go back to what it was before, I only have to make that change in one place. The terminal shows assertion error, change 3 to 2 in the solution. The test passes. Using a function also means that my condition can be as simple as I want or as complicated as I need, but the list comprehension will just be item for item in self.iterable if condition item. Now, I do not recommend using a name like condition because it's too general. It does not say what the function does. This is just to show that I think of list comprehensions as item for item in iterable if condition. I'm going to add more to this test. So comma after even numbers, odd underscore numbers, equal sign, square brackets, comma, square brackets. This makes two empty lists and names them. Enter after the append line, add else, colon. Odd underscore numbers dot append parentheses item. Come down to the second assertion, enter after it, self.assert equal, parentheses. Odd underscore numbers, comma. Square brackets, item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows assertion error. The list made with the for loop has 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on, odd numbers. This is still just every number in the range object, but add if not condition, parentheses item. The test passes. Self.assert equal, parentheses. Source.list underscore comprehensions dot get underscore odd underscore numbers, parentheses self.iterable, comma. Square brackets, item for item in self.iterable if not condition, parentheses item. The terminal shows attribute error. Module source, the list comprehensions has no attribute get odd numbers. Did you mean get even numbers? And earlier on, when I had this error or other attribute errors, I forgot to add it to the exceptions encountered. Hashtag attribute error. Come back to list comprehensions.py, add def get underscore odd underscore numbers, parentheses, numbers, colon. Return square brackets number for number in numbers. The terminal shows assertion error. Add if number modulo 2 is not equal to 0. The test passes. I'm going to add a function to remove this duplication. So enter 3 times after the list comprehension function. Add def is underscore even, parentheses number, colon at the end. Return number modulo 2 is equal to 0. Come now to get even numbers. Enter after the colon, return square brackets, number for number in numbers. If is underscore even, parentheses number. The terminal still shows green. I'll remove the other return statement. Come down to get odd numbers. Enter after the colon. Return square brackets, number for number in numbers. If not is underscore even, parentheses number. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the other return statement. I can also do other processes with a list comprehension, not just the append method. I'll add a test for it. DEF, test underscore making underscore A underscore list underscore W underscore processes, parentheses self, colon at the end. Square underscore club, equal sign, square brackets. For item in self.iterable, colon, square underscore club dot append, parentheses, item times item. Enter twice, backspace, self.assert equal, parentheses. Square underscore club, comma, square brackets item for item in self.iterable. The list made with the for loop has 0, 1, 4, 9, and so on, squares of the numbers from the range object. Change the list comprehension to item times item for item in self.iterable. The test passes. Self.assert equal, parentheses. Source.list underscore comprehensions dot square, parentheses, self.iterable, comma at the end. Square brackets item times item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows attribute error. Add def square, parentheses, numbers, colon at the end. Return square brackets number for number in numbers. The terminal shows assertion error. Change this to number star star 2 for number in numbers. The test passes. This is how to write number raised to the power of 2. I'm going to add a function to remove the duplication. Enter 3 times after import unit test. DEF process, parentheses, number, colon at the end. Return number raised to the power of 2. Then come down to test making a list with processes. Comment out the append line, add square underscore club dot append, parentheses, process, parentheses, item. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the commented line. Comment out the list comprehension in the first assertion, square brackets, process, parentheses, item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the commented line. Comment out the list comprehension in the second assertion, square brackets, process, parentheses, item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows green. I'll remove the commented line. Once again, I do not recommend using names like process or condition for functions because they do not say what the thing does. This is just to show that I think of list comprehensions as process item for item in iterable. Using the function means my process could be as simple as I want or as complicated as I need, but the list comprehension will stay the same. It'll just be process item for item in iterable. Now, I used is even as the name for this function because this is more descriptive and this is in the solution. I can also put them together. I can do processes and conditions in the same list comprehension. df test underscore making underscore a underscore list underscore w underscore processes underscore and underscore conditions parentheses self colon at the end. Even underscore squares, comma, odd underscore squares, equal sign square brackets, comma, square brackets. For item in self.iterable colon, if condition parentheses item colon, even underscore squares dot append parentheses process parentheses item. Else colon, odd underscore squares dot append parentheses process parentheses item. Self.assert equal parentheses. Even underscore squares, comma. Square brackets item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows assertion error. The list made with the for loop has 0, 4, 16, 36, and so on. The squares of the even numbers from the range object. This list comprehension is still just every item in the range object. When I add if condition parentheses item, the terminal shows assertion error, but this is now every item or every even number in the range object. Change the list comprehension to process parentheses item for item in self.iterable if condition item. The test passes. Self.assert equal parentheses. Odd underscore squares, comma. Square brackets item for item in self.iterable. The terminal shows assertion error. The list made with the odd squares list made with the for loop has 1, 9, 25, 49 square numbers of the odd numbers from the range object. Change the list comprehension to item for item in self.iterable if not condition parentheses item. The terminal shows assertion error. This is now just every odd number. Change it to process parentheses item for item in self.iterable if not condition item. The test passes. I ran tests to show that I can make a list from an iterable with the list constructor, with a for loop, with the extend method, and with list comprehensions. The for loop and list comprehensions were better than the list constructor when I have conditions and processes. I think of a list comprehension as square brackets, process item for item in iterable, if condition or if not condition. I can mix and match them depending on the problem I am trying to solve. I can also do this with dictionaries. They're called dict comprehensions. The syntax is curly braces, key colon value for key or value in iterable, if condition, if not condition. I can process the key, I can process the value, and the item from the iterable could be used as the keys or as the values. I can mix and match them in any variation that will get me a solution to the problem I'm working on. Would you like to test dictionaries? I'll see you in the next one.